Master and Man by Tolstoy. Chapter 2. The good stallion drew the sledge off with a light squeak of the runners and set out at a brisk pace along the hard frozen village road. "Where do you think you're riding? Give me the whip, Nikita," shouted Vasily Andreich, clearly delighting in his heir, who had perched himself behind on the runners. "I'll teach you. Run to your mother, you little devil." The boy jumped off. McCordy quickened his amble, skipped a step, and broke into a trot. Kresty, the hamlet where Vasily Andreich's house stood, was 6 houses in all. As soon as they had passed the last of them, the Kuznetsov's hut, they saw at once that the wind was far stronger than they had thought. The road could hardly be seen. The tracks of the runners drifted over as soon as they were made, and you could tell where the road was only because it lay a little higher than the ground around it. Snow was whirling over the whole plain, and the line where earth meets sky was gone. The Telyatyn forest, always plainly visible, only loomed up now and then, a dim blackness through the driven snow dust. The wind came from the left, stubbornly pushing the mane over to one side of McCordy's firm, well-fed neck, and bending aside his bushy tail, tied in a simple knot. Nikita sat on the windward side, and his long collar pressed against his face and nose. "He can't show what he's got today. Too much snow," said Vasily Andreich, proud of his good horse. "I drove him to Pashutino once. He did it in half an hour." "What's that?" asked Nikita, who couldn't hear through his collar. "To Pashutino, I said. He made it in half an hour," Vasily Andreich shouted. "No arguing with that. He's a good horse," said Nikita. They fell silent, but Vasily Andreich wanted to talk. "Well, what about the wife? Did you tell her not to pour for the cooper?" he began in the same loud voice, so certain that Nikita must be flattered to chat with a man as important and clever as himself, and so pleased with his own joke that it never entered his head the subject might be painful to Nikita. The wind carried the master's words away, and Nikita missed them again. Vasily Andreich repeated his joke about the cooper in his loud, careful voice. "God be with them, Vasily Andreich. I don't dig in those affairs. As long as she's not unkind to the boy, then let her be." "That's so," said Vasily Andreich. "Well then, will you be buying a horse in the spring?" he said, starting a new subject. "Can't get around it," answered Nikita, turning down his collar and leaning toward his master. Now the conversation interested Nikita, and he wanted to hear everything. The lad's groaned. "Time he plowed for himself. We've been hiring it out year after year," he said. "Take the low-cruppered one then. I won't set the price high," shouted Vasily Andreich, feeling worked up and slipping happily into his favorite pursuit. The one that swallowed all the powers of his mind. Horse trading. "Or give me 15 rubles instead, and I'll buy one at the horse fair," said Nikita, who knew that the low-cruppered horse Vasily Andreich was trying to unload on him would be dear at 7 rubles, and that once the master handed over that horse, he would book it at 25, and then you'd see no wages out of him for half a year. "It's a good horse. I want for you as I want for myself, in all conscience. Brekhanov never wronged a man. Let the loss fall on me. I'm not like the others. On my honor," he shouted in the very voice he used to talk his buyers and sellers around. "A real horse." "As you say," said Nikita with a sigh, and satisfied there was nothing more worth hearing, he let go of his collar, which at once shut over his ear and his face. They drove in silence for half an hour or so. The wind cut through at Nikita's side and arm, where the sheepskin was torn. He hunched himself together and breathed into the collar over his mouth, and all in all, he was not cold. "So what do you say? Do we go by way of Karamayshevo or take the straight road?" asked Vasily Andreich. By Karamayshevo the going was livelier, a well-traveled road with good marker stakes in 2 rows, but it was longer. The straight way was shorter, but the road was little used and had no stakes, or only poor ones, drifted over. Nikita thought a moment. "By Karamayshevo it's farther, but it drives better," he said. "But straight on, we've only the little hollow to get through without losing the way, and then it's good going through the forest," said Vasily Andreich, who wanted the straight road. "As you please," said Nikita, and let go of his collar again. Vasily Andreich did as he pleased, and after half a verst or so, at a tall oak branch that swayed in the wind with a few dry leaves still clinging to it, he turned left. From the turn onward the wind came almost head-on, and a light snow began to fall from above. Vasily Andreich drove, puffing out his cheeks and blowing his breath down into his mustache. Nikita dozed. They went on in silence like that for 10 minutes or so. Suddenly, Vasily Andreash said something. "What's that?" asked Nikita, opening his eyes. Vasily Andreash did not answer. He was twisting around, looking back behind them and ahead past the horse. The horse, his flanks and neck curled with sweat, was moving at a walk. "What's that you said?" Nikita asked again. "What's that? What's that?" Vasily Andreash mimicked him angrily. "No stakes to be seen. We must be off the road." "Hold up then. I'll go look for the road," said Nikita. He sprang lightly from the sledge, pulled the whip out from under the straw, and set off to the left, on the side where he had been sitting. The snow was not deep that year, so there was passable ground everywhere, but in places it came up to the knee and poured into Nikita's boot. He walked about, feeling with his feet in the whip, but there was no road anywhere. "Well," said Vasily Andreash when Nikita came back to the sledge, "no road on this side. I'll have to go try the other. Something's showing dark up ahead there. Go have a look at that," said Vasily Andreash. Nikita went there too, came up to the dark patch. It was bare earth, blown from stripped winter fields over the snow and staining it black. He cast about to the right as well, then came back to the sledge, beat the snow off himself, shook it out of his boot, and got in. "We have to go right," he said with decision. "The wind was on my left side before, and now it's straight in my face. Bear right," he said again, decided. Vasily Andreash listened to him and bore right, but still there was no road. They drove that way for some time. The wind did not let up, and snow kept falling. "Well, Vasily Andreich, it seems we're lost altogether," Nikita said suddenly, almost with relish. "What's this?" he said, pointing at black potato stalks poking up through the snow. Vasily Andreich pulled up the horse, which by now was sweating and heaving heavily in his steep flanks. "What is it?" he asked. "It's that we're on the Zakharovka field. Look how far off we've come." "You don't say," said Vasily Andreich. "I'm not fooling, Vasily Andreich. It's the truth," said Nikita. "You can hear it by the sledge. We're driving over a potato field, and there are the heaps where they carted in the stalks. It's the Zakharovka estate field." "See where we've wandered," said Vasily Andreich. "What do we do now?" "We take straight ahead, that's all." "We'll come out somewhere," said Nikita. "If not at Zakharovka, then at the manor farm." Vasily Andreich obeyed and let the horse go as Nikita said. They drove that way for a good while. At times they came out onto bared winter wheat, and the sledge rattled over ridges of frozen earth. At times they came onto stubble fields, winter or spring, where wormwood stalks and straws stuck up from under the snow, thrashing in the wind. At times they drove into deep snow, even and white on every side, with nothing showing above it at all. The snow fell from above and now and then rose up from below. The horse was plainly worn out. His coat had curled and frosted over with sweat, and he went at a walk. Suddenly he stumbled off an edge and sat down in a gully or a ditch. Vasily Andreich wanted to stop, but Nikita shouted at him, "Why hold him? We got in, so we get out. Hup, sweetheart, hup now, hup my own," he cried in a cheery voice to the horse, jumping out of the sledge and sinking into the ditch himself. The horse gave a lunge and at once scrambled out onto a frozen bank. Clearly it was a dug ditch. "Where are we then?" said Vasily Andreich. "We'll soon find out," answered Nikita. "Drive on, we'll come out somewhere." "Wouldn't that be the Goryachkin forest?" said Vasily Andreich, pointing at something black that had appeared through the snow ahead of them. "We'll drive up and see what sort of forest it is," said Nikita. Nikita could see long dry willow leaves flying at them from the direction of the black shape, so he knew it was not a forest but a homestead, but he didn't want to say so. And sure enough, they had not gone 20 yards past the ditch before trees evidently darkened in front of them, and a new mournful sound was heard. Nikita had guessed right. It was not a forest, but a row of tall willows, a few leaves still fluttering on them. The willows had clearly been planted along the ditch of a threshing yard. Coming up to the willows which moaned drearily in the wind, the horse suddenly lifted his forelegs higher than the sledge, hauled his hind legs up after them, onto higher ground, turned left, and stopped, sinking to his knees in the snow. It was a road. "Well, here we are," said Nikita, "and no knowing where." The horse went sure-footed along the snowed-over road, and they had not gone 100 yards along it when the straight line of a barn's wattle wall showed dark ahead, its roof thickly heaped with snow that streamed off it without stopping. Past the barn, the road turned into the wind, and they drove into a snowdrift. But ahead there was a lane between two houses, so the drift had clearly just blown across the road, and they had to drive through it. And so it was. They crossed the drift and came into a village street. At the end house, frozen washing hung on a line and thrashed desperately in the wind. Shirts, one red, one white, trousers, leg cloths, and a skirt. The white shirt struggled most desperately of all, waving its sleeves. Look at that. Either the woman's lazy or she's dying that the washing's not in for the holiday, said Nikita, watching the flapping shirts.